You're tuned in to the Reality Fred podcast. Food and travel, cool stuff, weird stuff, entertainment, and more. You made the choice to be here, and my friend, you've chosen wisely. Now buckle up, because it's time to get started. It's time for the Reality Fred podcast.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Reality Fred podcast, and once again, thank you for joining me to all the Reality Fred followers out there. I'm pretty excited about tonight's episode that I'm recording. It's actually one that I've been working on for the past few weeks, and I've teased it on our Facebook page. And but first, what I want to do is basically kind of take a quick walk through how the idea for tonight's podcast episode came to be. So, as some of you may already know, I am a photographer and run a photography company here outside of Pittsburgh. And a couple weeks ago, my girlfriend and photographer was editing something, and she was showing it to me, and it was something that she shot in a studio. And the way the light was reflecting off of the kind of set in the studio, it reminded me of what's called the digital rain from the Matrix. But if you've ever seen the Matrix movies, it's kind of that green, the screen with all the green numbers and letters trickling down. That's kind of symbolic of all of the Matrix movies in the trilogy. And just seeing that for the moment reminded me that, boy, it's been a long time since I had watch the Matrix movies. So kind of made me think, hey, you know what, maybe tonight I'll turn on Amazon Prime and see if they have the Matrix movie. So later that evening, checked out Amazon Prime, and sure enough, they did have not only the Matrix movie, but the whole trilogy. So that evening, I ended up watching the Matrix, and then a few evenings later, ended up watching the Matrix Reloaded and the Matrix Revolutions. Now, the Matrix, the first movie, was released, came out in 1999, and at that time, I was still actually in high school, but a few years later, when I was in college, our liberal arts college, we were required to take philosophy classes, and so I ended up minoring in it. So over the next couple years, as I'm taking philosophy classes, of course, Matrix Reloaded and Revolutions came out, and of course, a lot of the topics in the movies, the Matrix trilogy, would make themselves known as examples in the philosophy classes. So, thought it was really interesting learning even more about some of the things that were, I don't want to say hidden, but part of the Matrix that if you've never studied philosophy, you kind of really wouldn't know about. And so, my girlfriend has a teenage boy, and I kind of suggested him to watch the movie The Matrix. Now, he had never seen it before. So he watched the movie The Matrix, and apparently liked it so much that he ended up binge-watching all night and watched all three movies back to back to back. And I thought to myself, a 15-year-old seeing The Matrix for the first time now here in 2017, when it's not really, part of the discussion. When those movies came out, there was so much talk about what the movies meant and the hidden meanings and the metaphors and the symbolism. But of course, watching it today in 2017, that's not really out there. And of course, for a kid that's still in school, obviously hasn't, taken philosophy classes in college yet and things like that. It's while on the surface, obviously he enjoyed the movie, watched all three that night and really liked it. There's so much more to the movie that, of course, that he wouldn't be aware of or understand. So it kind of inspired me to want to put a podcast together to kind of break things down. So really my audience tonight is for that teenage boy there, and but really anybody who has seen the movie The Matrix but maybe never studied any philosophy, or has and would like to just kind of relive the movie with me. So what I'm actually going to do, in preparation for this, of course, watched the movies now several times. I've had in my collection for a long time now. It's called The Matrix and Philosophy, which is a really neat book edited by William Irwin, which we'll reference here quite a bit tonight. And it's a collection of philosophical essays. So I've had that for a while, and I've always enjoyed that. So, and of course, now in 2017, you can pretty much Google and YouTube just about anything. So spent the past couple weeks doing the necessary research because I wanted to put this together, and I wanted to do a good job of it. And one of the things that I don't want to say that I learned, but that became apparent to me is that there, of course, the first movie, The Matrix, there is an overall message, an overall question. When you introduce the second and third movies, there's an even greater question and a lot of deeper meaning. And you always have to think of it, of course, when any movie comes out, it's not a guarantee. You don't know that it's going to be successful. So obviously the first movie, The Matrix, was released with the possibility that it might have to be a standalone movie. That, of course, if it didn't do well, obviously the second and third movies were never going to be made. But of course the exact opposite happened. It did amazing, and then they made the second and third movies. Now I'm sure at the time the idea of what the second and third movies, what the overall further story was, I'm sure the writers and producers knew what that was, but at the same time the first movie had to kind of initially come out and be put together as a standalone movie. So the first movie tells a story and it answers a question. But it's not until the second movie begins that it does go even deeper. So what I realized in order to do this podcast is that we're going to have to break this up into a two-part podcast. So part one, we're going to specifically look at the first movie. Because, and then we'll do part two. Part two is then we'll analyze and break down the second and third, Reloaded and Revolutions. Because you cannot really understand the second and third movies until you fully understand the first, and because the second and third movies ask an even more profound question and goes deeper, you have to give it its time, and you can't just quickly go through that. And if we try to do all through, the whole trilogy in one podcast, it would just be too much, and we'd be bypassing certain things that need to be looked at. So again, we're going to do this as a two-part podcast. So this one is specifically going to be looking at the first movie, The Matrix. And at times I may tease. We'll see. I don't know if it's possible for me to do this whole podcast without touching upon what my thoughts are for the meaning of the second and third movie. I'm going to try. I might tease it at the end. But we're going to try to look at it as its own self-contained movie. And then a lot of actually what I'm going to end up saying tonight, we're going to have to actually break apart. It changes. When the second and third movies, when you actually understand what's going on, what the message is, what the story is, who the players are, it actually changes things. But we're going to look at the first movie tonight and ignore that. So we're going to look at the first movie all by itself, kind of ignoring that the second and third movie even exists until we get to part two of the podcast. So here's how we're going to do this, and I tried to have a little bit of organization for this podcast. So we're going to start, here's what we're going to go through. We're going to start by asking the big question, what is the Matrix? So what exactly is the Matrix? What is the big metaphor? What is the big question? So that's where we'll start. Then we'll get into what exactly is the story. What is the story within the movie? We'll talk about that. Then we will go through why does the story unfold as it does. So, obviously it's an action movie, it's a science fiction movie, just like any movie. There's a hero, there's a love story, but scene after scene, is there a pattern? And if so, why? And why does it unfold the way it does? And it's pretty obvious, and we'll get to that, and that'll be a fun part. Once we cover that, so once we understand those three big things, what is the Matrix, what is the message, what is the metaphor, once we understand what truly is the story, what is the picture that's being painted for us, and why does it unfold the way it does, then we'll go through the movie itself. So we'll go through all the major scenes, and at that point what we'll do is we'll go through the major scenes that reveal clues, meaning, and symbolism. So when I say clues, things that reveal themselves to point to and connect back to what I'm saying the overall metaphor is, as well as what I'm saying that the storyline is. And then, of course, this movie is just sprinkled with all sorts of symbolism. Now, the quantity of philosophical and religious symbolism in the movie The Matrix is never ending. And one of the neat things, when I was kind of doing the research for this recording, if you remember the scene when Morpheus and Neo first meet in person, and he offers him the choice between the red pill and the blue pill, and he says if you take the red pill, you'll stay in Wonderland and see just how far this rabbit hole goes. Which really kind of neat in real life when you start researching The Matrix, especially on YouTube. It is a rabbit hole that just keeps going deeper and deeper, because you have people that just get crazy with the possible theories and things like that. So I'm going to try really, really hard. I do not want to go into deep theoretical theories of the movie, because I don't think that the movie is that trying to trick you and things like that, and as some of these theories, and I'll give some examples later on of what I mean by that. And but I think at the end of the day, it is a movie. So what we're going to do is, whenever we come to a question of whether something is actually any deeper or more mysterious than it seems to be, I'm going to play it safe and say it's a movie that we're going to take the movie and what's on the surface of the movie at its word. And again, that'll kind of make more sense when we get into this, and it'll make even more sense as we do part 2 of the podcast, because when you get into the second and third movies, it gets so confusing, and so many people were confused after watching the movie, that we're going to analyze and explain what happened and the meaning. But it's kind of dangerous. It is an endless rabbit hole if you just keep going and going, which I don't think is accurate, and I disagree with a lot of the craziness on the internet. So we'll go through and kind of point out the different clues, meaning, and symbolism. But I'm going to stick to, it's impossible to touch upon everything, so I'm really going to stick to the concepts and the ideas that I think are more directly related, more obvious, first of all, and then directly related to what I'm saying that the meaning of the movie is, and some of the sublines or subplots. But, at every corner, every frame in this movie, that there's something, and it's just not all necessary to go through. And then finally, once we get done going through the movie, we're going to conclude with the question: is the Matrix possible? And that was something that before I started getting into this, over the past few weeks, I've learned a heck of a lot of scientific theories that are out there right now, and we'll go through that as best as I can explain it. But they're very, very interesting and definitely worth taking a look at. And I think you'll agree with me that at minimal, very interesting when we get to that point. So let's go ahead and get started. So again, at the beginning, I said I wanted to talk about what is the Matrix. What is the metaphor? And in short, so from this point forward, I'm going to do my best when I refer to The Matrix. I'm going to try to refer to it as the movie The Matrix and the digital Matrix, because obviously there's the movie called The Matrix, and then within the movie, The Matrix is that digital software program being put into all basically the conscious brains of all the human beings in the pod. So what is the Matrix movie? What is the metaphor? Essentially, the movie is a metaphor for control. In its simplest form, it is all about control. A lot of people look at it and see all of the religious symbolism and think that it's a metaphor for Christianity and things like that. These are all symbols in the movie, but the overall metaphor